Recently, I came across a short. I'm getting you know what it's like when you go on YouTube Shorts. You get inundated with all these different shorts from all these different places, and this short was like a minute-long snippet of a fella by the name of Dave Smith. And Dave is it says he's a Jewish American. He's a libertarian party, but he's going on about peace, and he's going on about that we have to stop wars. In particular, he's talking about that the United States needs to stay out of wars. He's like, you know what? We're not in any danger. These countries that we're bombing, they're not a direct danger to us. We have two oceans between us and the world, and we have friendly relations with both of our neighbors to the north and to the south. And he's talking about the idea of America pulling back from the world. That America needs to really consider who it is that is their enemy. Who is it that they are definitely, truly threatened by? In particular, here he's talking about Iran. He's like, how can Iran be a threat to us? They have no way of harming us. Let's pull back, sort of. Anyhow, as he was speaking, I thought about that passage from the Beatitudes, where Jesus says, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." Peacemakers. Blessed are the peacemakers. When we make something, it's an intentional act. It's not something that happens passively. I can't passively build a house, but I can actively build a house. I can't passively make something work, but I can actively make it work. And I would argue, I can't passively make peace, but I can actively and intentionally make peace. It's difficult. Let's not split hairs on that one. No, I'm not saying, all I have to do is intentionally want peace. No, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, but pulling away doesn't bring peace. Right? Pulling away from the world doesn't make you safe. It doesn't provide you with safety and comfort. It doesn't make the threats any more real. And not for nothing, but pulling away from the world may actually mean that you're ignoring your responsibility to your neighbor. And all of us have a responsibility to our neighbor. We have a responsibility to the person who lives next door. We have a responsibility to the person that lives on the other side of the town. Our town has a responsibility to the other towns that are around us. All these towns together have a responsibility to take care of the towns in the province. The province has a responsibility to take care of the other provinces, and ultimately our nation, or province, state, whatever terminology you happen to prefer, our nation has a responsibility to love its neighbors as well. Its neighbors, of course, being the countries to the north or to the south, the countries, the next ocean over or two oceans over, whatever it happens to be. We all, on a micro and macro scale, have a responsibility to take care of our neighbors. This isn't something that's really up for debate, despite the fact that there are people who may want to debate me on this. Jesus tells us to love your neighbor as yourself. John tells us that you can't love God if you're not loving your neighbor. We know that we are called to an increasingly radical form of love as we grow in our faith. That being said, what Dave here is talking about he's pro-peace, but pro-peace isn't necessarily enough. You've got to be anti-war. And this mentality, it holds true for a lot of the ugliness we see in the world. It's not okay to be, pro-equality. We must be anti-fascist. We must be anti-racist. We must be, it has to turn into something that becomes active and intentional. To be pro-peace, to be anti-war, to be truly against war means that we must actively work against war. And that doesn't mean by sending troops. That's last-ditch effort. You've already probably crossed the Rubicon in that event. If the only way I can prevent war is to send troops, then war is already something that is happening or is at the very brink of happening. No, we want to stop it from getting that far. And we stop it from getting that far by actively and intentionally loving and providing for our neighbors. USAID was a great example of it. I mean, I understand the idea of soft power, but USAID was a great example of how you can be anti-war by providing for people. Half the time we go to war, it's because of scarcity. We go to war because, somebody has taken something that is ours, or we go to war to take something that isn't ours, whatever the case might be. Well, a great way of preventing war is making sure that nobody experiences that scarcity, that nobody ever gets to the place where they think the only way they can get what they want, the only way they can get what they need is by killing someone else, by trying to destroy someone or something else. It's not enough for us to be pro-peace. We must be working towards a world where war is never seen to be something that's needed. We've got to work towards a world where war is something that is never seen to be a valid option, a worthwhile endeavor, where war is seen not only to be like, oh, that's the last thing we want to do, but where it's just so far out of our mind. What do you mean war? How could we ever be so desperate that we would need war? So how do we as individuals here, wherever you may be, how do we as members of a larger community, like a city or a province or a state or a country, how do we act in ways that keep people from ever growing so desperate that war seems like a good solution to whatever problems it is that they're facing? To me, I think that's a great question. How do we as a nation, how does Canada as a nation say, okay, we've been peacekeepers, we've done that, but how do we become peacemakers? Yeah, we've sent troops into hot situations. We've sent troops to Cyprus, we've sent troops to Yugoslavia, we've sent troops to Eritrea, we've sent troops all over the world to be peacekeepers. How do we transition to become peacemakers? The United States can say, yeah, we've been the world's policeman for 50, 60, 70 years. The world has counted on the United States to keep the peace. But how do we, as a nation, help to make peace? How do we help to eradicate the idea of war? How do we help to eradicate the feeling of the necessity of war? How do we eradicate the desperation that brings war forward, that makes war an inevitability? That's where we need to go. I think thinking along those lines, to be people who are actively and intentionally trying to end war, that's where we need to go. USAID, again, before it was cut, that was part of its mission. Maybe not actively, but one of the results would have been people are fed, people are provided for, people are educated, they don't feel desperate, they don't feel the scarcity that they used to feel. They want to grow, they want to succeed, they want to prosper. War allows for none of that stuff. What was it that Kennedy was famous for? Remember, John F. Kennedy, he put together the Peace Corps. Americans would go abroad and they would take on projects to help communities, small communities, villages and towns, to help larger communities like provinces and states, to help massive communities like entire nations. This is how we make peace. This is how we become peacemakers. This is how ultimately then we become called children of God. Amen.